What's good, friends list, episode 76 of the Game Pass Gamecast coming at you. Since its initial delay into next year, 343 Industries has kept relatively quiet about Halo Infinite after the criticism it faced from its initial gameplay reveal, but the Kirkland, Washington developer is now pulling the curtain back just a bit on Master Chief's newest adventure, including the reveal of a new fall 2021 release window. So, this week, we dive into all of the new updates for Microsoft's flagship franchise, including the changes made to the overall art style, Joseph Staten taking over as creative director on the project, additional details to character models, the new coding system for customization, and much, much more. Does this update hit the mark for fans? Plus, Cyberpunk 2077 is officially out worldwide, and while many are enjoying their trip to Night City, some alarming issues regarding seizure triggers are beginning to arise given the game's lack of ample warning. Could this have been completely and easily avoided given the correct approach? Also, 2021's edition of PAX East, PAX West, and PAX Unplugged have been scheduled, but given the current health crisis, is a June start date being a bit too unrealistic? All of this and much more on the newest jam-packed episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Budget.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all of that jazz I tell you every week, wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways like our Cyberpunk 2077 one that we did last week. Thank you, everyone, for entering that, whoever did, and, the lucky winners and whatnot. So, congrats on all that. That's not the end, though. We got more coming up. Not necessarily right now, this episode or whatever. You fucking understand. It's coming up. We got more shit given away.
There'll be more giveaways.
There'll be more giveaways. We'll hook everybody up eventually, I'm sure, at this point. So, with that being said, I'm your host, as always, Travis White, a.k.a. Travless, on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? And I want you to give me... We're recording on a Wednesday the 9th, because we're recording it early. Game Awards is tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, this episode is going to go live on Friday, the day after the Game Awards, so this will be more of a time capsule question, I guess. I want you to give me one prediction for the Game Awards as we head into tomorrow, since we're recording this early so we could watch it, and obviously if something, as we learned last year, major could happen comparatively. I don't think a lot of us imagined the next-gen Xbox being revealed, like hard revealed, at the Game Awards last year. Usually it's, hey, we're getting like B+ level hype stuff from the Game Awards usually, but Jeff stepped his game up last year, so, in case we gotta record something like Adam and I did that following day, like real quick turnaround just to get our impressions out, we're recording early, so I want you to give me, Mike, one prediction, whether it could be a game announcement, game winner for an award, or anything like that. Give me a prediction for the Game Awards heading into tomorrow's show.
I guess if I'm going to give a prediction, I think my prediction, and I don't even know if this is necessarily groundbreaking or even a hot take, if you will. Mm-hmm. I think that Ghost of Tsushima is going to win Game of the Year over The Last of Us Part 2. I think is going to be the one prediction that I would be comfortable making at least. Mm-hmm.
Well, they did.
I don't think Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to... I just don't think you can use a remake as a Game of the Year. I just think that's a cop-out. Mm-hmm. Not that it's not an amazing game, an amazing remake, mm-hmm. but I think that there's enough original content out there that it shouldn't be... It's not that it shouldn't be considered, per se. I just don't think that it would... I don't think it'll win. It shouldn't win, really.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I loved Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's one of my games of the year. It went off kind of... For somebody who never had a deep connection with Final Fantasy VII, but also as a kid growing up a Nintendo kid, really, and having an N64 at first before I got a PS1, that always being like Final Fantasy VII being the equivalent to Ocarina of Time for the PlayStation. That was the game I was always like, man, one day I'm going to play that. That looks really dope. But playing it, the remake of it, and it going in the direction it did towards the end, being obviously, there's going to be multiple parts of this game, sequels and stuff coming out of it, direct sequels to that, and being a line of games. I loved it. I thought what they did was great. It was unique. It was fresh. But I agree that when I look back on my, games that I want to, that I'm looking back on my lineage of games that I played this year that, things I really enjoyed, like Ghost of Tsushima, like The Last of Us Part 2, which I can't talk enough about, Doom Eternal. I don't see it in my top 5, maybe top 10, but top 5. And I even want to, and I think it's going to be, I want to take Game of the Year in a new direction this year. Our Game of the Year show last year was good. Like we just had much more third-party stuff to talk about, in our opinion, and some Xbox exclusive stuff, where this feels like such a setup year for Xbox and Microsoft that there isn't a ton in terms of, third-parparty stuff that really shone, and it was a very PlayStation-heavy year this year, in my opinion. So, like, I almost want to, I'll table it for later that we talk about, but even taking our Game of the Year and expanding on it, just games that we just fucking played this year. Not just, hey, games that came out this year, but like games on PC and Xbox that we played. It could have came out in fucking 2015. I don't really care. It could have came out in 2003, like Rainbow Six fucking 3, which I may bring to the table. So, it's shit like that I'm more interested in having those conversations about. But getting back on track, in terms of, I agree. I don't think you're out of whack by saying Ghost of Tsushima could potentially win. It's a game that I didn't finish but loved in terms of what I played. Just I was getting pulled in a couple different directions of games I wanted to also play at that time that kind of filled that. They scratched that itch I was wanting. So it's a game that I do want to come back to, but a lot of people are, I think if The Last of Us Part 2 wasn't as polarizing as it was, despite how fucking incredible that game was. I mean, hell, we have, my fiance and I now have a puppy, and it's named Abby after one of the characters from Last of Us. So, that game touched me in a way that was fucking, I think is a masterclass in narrative writing and game direction, really, even. But if it wasn't as polarizing to so many chuds as it was, and I say that because a lot of it is just, oh my god, there's, a lesbian couple and there's a trans character, and people are fucking up in arms about that shit because it's fucking 1920, I guess. Yeah. So, to me, that's not that radical of a thing, but I like to think I'm not a complete piece of shit. So, it's...
I think that
if it was, point being what I'm saying is, if it wasn't as radical, I would probably disagree with that, but because it's such a divisive game to so many people for some reason, I wouldn't be shocked if we look back and see, oh shit, Ghost of Tsushima actually came through and won, because they won the player's choice, or the player's voice award, which is completely voted on by the fans, and it was Game of the Year from the fan vote.
I think that, if you break this down from like a categorical standpoint, in categories, like the reason why I give Game of the Year to Ghost of Tsushima is I think that best game direction and best narrative are going to go to The Last of Us Part 2. And then I think that best performance is going to go to Ashley Johnson as Ellie, I would guess, or Laura Bailey as Abby. I mean, both were really good performances, but I just think that The Last of Us is going to run into this thing with some of the media members that, like, they're winning everything. So, like, they're going to throw something else a bone. Now, I know with the Game Awards that there's a lot of fan voting that goes into it also. But that's my reasoning, at least. But it would not be a show if we weren't missing Adam Marsh. And by missing Adam Marsh, I mean to say that, yes, like, best ongoing game's probably going to be Fortnite, but that's not really why I'm here. I'm going to come here to say that Fallout or Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout is going to win Best Indie just because of how crazy it was whenever it first came out. But I want Spelunky 2 to win Best Indie because I want Adam to eat crow about Spelunky and talking shit on Spelunky.
I wouldn't say that too loud, man. He is on Discord. He is obviously he is part of this server because he still comes on the show. Like, I wouldn't say that too loud. He's gonna bust in here and be like, "The fuck you just say?"
I'll say it to his face. He was really vicious to Spelunky, and Spelunky didn't do anything to him.
No, it didn't. And the funniest part of that was that it was out of nowhere. Really, when we were going through, like we were analyzing. It was the episode that we went through and kind of just gave commentary on Polygon's top 100 games of the 2010s, and like. You go back and it was a really good episode. It's kind of lengthy because it was really in depth, but I really, really recommend if you're a newer listener, go back and listen to that episode. It's fucking fantastic because Adam going off and just being like, Spelunky was in like the top 10, and he was just like, we were just going through, and there's like a couple of games that were actually like legitimate, like, okay, like, you know, we were all kind of on agreeance, like, you know, it probably shouldn't be there, but we get it. But he just goes, you know, Spelunky, you know, just, it's okay. Just go. Like, we're getting that out of here. And we're like, Spelunky? And he's just like, it's okay. It's not that great. And then, like, ever since then, he's kind of just been like, I just don't get it. I don't get it. It's a good game, but, like, people are acting like it fucking reinvented the wheel.
But to be fair, like, he didn't go at it like I would go at it. Mm-mm. Like, he went it in the most Adam Marsh way possible, which was like he's like basically Canadian. Like, I would say Adam's like a resident Canadian.
Yes.
And he has no Canadian heritage, but he's just like so polite when he does
he's just
stuff like that.
You know, I just don't think your game's that great, but it is a fun game. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
He's like, the devs, you guys are super talented. Like, everything about the game is amazing, except for the actual game. I just don't enjoy it.
I get like that too, though. Like, I stand by devs so much half the time, which rightfully so in my opinion, that I'm like, you know, you're dumping it takes the biggest amount of balls in the world to put something creatively out to people, to have them judge it and whatnot and play it, that, you know, especially in an indie level that is usually pretty unique, that it's like, you know, it takes a lot of balls. But circling back around to all of this, one prediction I'll give to, just since we got into this and then we'll get rolling. But I wouldn't be shocked, game of the year wise. I personally think The Last of Us is still going to take it, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see Hades actually take it, because people have been fucking in love with this game, and rightfully so. I've yet to play it. I'm not a huge roguelike person. Like, I liked my time with Dead Cells. I liked my time, you know, with a couple of other roguelites I played. Like, I really want to play Risk of Rain 2. But everything that I've heard about this from Supergiant Games, who, with fucking Bastion, with fucking, what's the other tower defense game? I can't remember. But games that people have fucking adored, only to go in and have this game released and go into early access with Epic Games, and then come out on Switch in full release, and then on PC as well, on Steam and whatnot too, but get a full release and grow to an even astronomically bigger level and get the praise it has for from an indie game with a small fucking team who is ridiculously talented and also doesn't fucking lean into crunch, gives people time off. Like, I would love to. There's this underlying theory that a lot of people are like, it's going to be Last of Us for a lot of the bigger awards, but Game of the Year, Hades, and it's going to be a statement. So, I you know, not to drag it on any longer, that would be my thing. But also, too, I'm hearing, I don't know if it's true, but I feel very confident from the sources I've seen report on this or show this, and the footage I've seen. But I wouldn't be shocked if we see an actual legitimate teaser for The Wolf Among Us Season 2.
That would just make me so happy.
Yeah, my nips would be hard. That'd be like at 100% nip hardness level, like like just burning through my shirt at that point. So that's kind of my two big things. Xbox actually, Aaron Greenberg from Xbox came out today and saying, hey, definitely tune in. We're going to talk about some stuff, but it's not going to be at the level of last year on our end. So don't expect a ton of stuff from Xbox. But anyways, Mike, real quick before we get into Button Mash for the week, anything you wanted to kind of, that you've been playing that you want to run through? I've been trying to dish you some topical stuff, before we head in instead of, just what you're playing. But
Yeah.
anything you've been playing, out of the ordinary that you want to run through real quick?
Not a whole lot. I just this past week has been pretty busy for me. Finishing up my undergrad coursework to graduate from college pretty much consumed my life to the point where, like, if anyone knows me knows that, like, I have this thing with Halo, and particularly Halo 3 and Halo 2. And let's just say that, like, in my Steam library, I hadn't launched Halo Master Chief Collection in 5 days. And that's probably the longest I've gone since it's been on PC. So I just haven't really been playing a lot of games, since last week, unfortunately. But that's all under the table. I'm gonna download Doom Eternal, and I'm gonna get that taken care of. And that's what's on the docket next. That's how I'll handle it.
Yeah, and you can get that on Game Pass right now on PC.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, same on my end. I actually just got a new graphics card today because I'm not sure if you heard, Mike, but there's some fucking bigger game coming out this week. Actually, recording this right now, technically we could play it at 7 p.m. tonight because I have it fucking preloaded on Steam and everything. But I've been kind of in between games and stuff in that weird limbo where I don't want to start anything too deep in terms of I know my ass is going to be playing Cyberpunk very soon. So I didn't want to necessarily start into anything specific with that. I've been playing through, kind of dabbling toe in and out of Star Wars Battlefront 2's campaign, which is really great if you're a Star Wars fan. I talked about that last week, I think. It's fucking stellar in terms of the narrative that was written and created by one of my favorite editors from IGN at one point, Mitch Dyer. Shout out to him over at EA. And what they've done with that Star Wars IP and transformed that game from the shit state that and being quite honest, the shit state that it came out in and the amount of backlash, having at one point the most downvoted comment of all time under the reasoning for the loot boxes and stuff that went into that game and how broke it was, the most downvoted comment in Reddit history at one point. So that'll tell you a lot about it. But with the Celebration edition of the game coming out, and me only playing a little bit on console before, I picked it up on Steam when it was on sale. And now that I have a pretty good PC that can run it at a high level, it's fucking fantastic. The blasters feel great. I hate the analogy of when, and I fall into that camp sometimes where a reviewer will say, "Oh, it makes you feel like blah 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 playing this game." Oh, like with the Arkham games, it's always notorious for my man Greg Miller saying in his review back in 2009 of Arkham Asylum of, it makes you feel like Batman. And that's been like carried forward so many times that now people use that of, it really makes you feel like X, playing X game about X. It really makes you feel like them. But it is true playing this iteration of Star Wars when you're thinking of actual, battles within the Star Wars universe between, stormtroopers and the Republic. And, it really, they nailed that so fucking much. The aesthetic, the kick of the guns, the actual punchiness of the blasters whenever you shoot them, it just feels so snappy and good that, I can't say enough good things about it. Outside of that, I actually booted up Doom Eternal just to run with my new graphics card, and it's fucking great. But like I was saying, I've been kind of in between. I'm even opening up my Steam library right now just because I've been playing a lot of stuff on PC recently to see if there was really anything else that sticks out that I've been like, oh yeah, I've been putting some time into that. But really not much. I've been just kind of dipping my toe in and out of games just to play them. And I've been, unfortunately, playing Fortnite too. Like, I've been pretty consistently because it's surprisingly been fun playing it, like diving in, just hot dropping and just fucking around. And I'll at this point with skill-based matchmaking that's in it, I always end up like within the top 5, but I suck at building. Like I'll end up getting 4 or 5 kills within the game, but I've only won a solo game once in the fucking like 3 years playing this game almost. That it's like, it's just because I suck at building. I can't fucking build, and I just give up at building because it's just asininely hard on PC to be able to do it. It's, if you ask me, it's much easier to shoot on PC, just much more natural given any kind of shooter playing it on PC, in my opinion. But building with Builder Pro with a controller is just absolutely like, it's just kind of like, it kind of breaks the game, if you ask me, in general, where it's just one button pushes to be able to build and stuff like that. And, you know, you got sweaties out there cranking 90s, man, you know?
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But anyways, Mike, we got a lot to run through. Let's head into Button Mash for this week. That's where we run through our quick hit stuff, quick news stories before we head into our bigger topics this week to get you in the know of what's going on in the world of Xbox Game Pass, and PC games. You know all that jazz. Starting off with, an ex-Naughty Dog game designer has joined ZeniMax Online to work on a, quote, new unannounced AAA IP. And if you know, ZeniMax Online is the studio that makes The Elder Scrolls Online. Quentin Cobb previously worked on both The Last of Us and Uncharted 4 as a game designer before joining ZeniMax. The unannounced AAA IP mentioned by Cobb in his tweet is yet to be revealed, but as well as Cobb, the project has already pulled in veterans of games such as Destiny, Red Dead Redemption, Shadow of Mordor, XCOM, and Battlefield. So I'm interested with how many different styles and genres of games that come in with that. I'm interested to see what kind of comes out about that, because it's clearly going to be some type of MMO or something like that, but I digress. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, the remake of the beloved action game, has been delayed. A tweet from the official Ubisoft UK Twitter account announced the remake, which was originally revealed in early September and scheduled for release on January 21st, 2021, has now been delayed to March 18th, 2021. Ubisoft's reasoning for delaying Prince of Persia remake is a common one: COVID-19, shocker, and the many complications that the year like 2020 has presented. Activision has released a cinematic trailer for Season 1 of Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and it features some hints at what appears to be a new multiplayer map, the new Warzone map, and a new operator. The trailer features a place called Rebirth Island, a location that will look very familiar to those who played Blackout on the Alcatraz map in Black Ops 4. The new operator, ex-KGB leader Viktor Stitch Kuzmin, talks about the island and explains the vengeance he wants to enact on Russell Adler, who is featured in the campaign of Cold War and shown in the trailer torturing Stitch. Call of Duty Black Ops, again, Cold War, jumping into that, received a major update ahead of its huge Season 1 content drop, but some Xbox players are suffering from a strange bug that seems to be a holdover from the last game in the subseries, Black Ops 4. The Blackout Trial Bug seemingly locks players out from the game despite them owning the full version. Charlie Intel points out that following the update, many players on social media have reported booting the game to find an error screen saying, quote, Blackout Trial has ended, with the only option being to leave the game or buy the full version. These players own the full game of the new game and are given no option to bypass the screen, meaning the game is unplayable.
Do they have a fix for that, or are people just reinstalling the game and it works? What, like, they just don't have it? They don't have that solved?
Yeah, I guess they just don't have a hotfix for it yet or anything. Interesting. Okay. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, has escaped video game purgatory, and Ubisoft has announced the long-awaited return will be available on platforms starting on January 14th, 2021. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, was a licensed 2D beat-em-up developed and released by Ubisoft in 2010 to coincide with the release of Edgar Wright's live-action movie adaptation of the graphic novels by Brian Lee O'Malley, which, if you haven't seen the movie, it's actually really fucking stellar, so it's on Netflix, go watch it. State of Decay 2, the latest update, brings optimizations for both the Xbox Series X and Series S, including, quote, lightning quick load times, improved world and shadow detail, and responsive 60 frames per second presentation at up to 4K resolutions. Announced on Xbox Wire, this update also adds a new lethal difficulty that developer Undead Labs has, quote, turned right to the edge of impossible, which is sounding like something. I like a hard difficulty, but I don't know about that. Epic Games has announced, due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, it does not plan to hold in-person Fortnite events in 2021, including the Fortnite World Cup, but will continue to host online competitions throughout the next year. Revealed in a blog post, Epic states that while its, quote, intent is to eventually hold global in-person tournaments again, quote, its priority for such for any such event is the health and safety of our players and staff. And finally, after a 2-year stream of new environments, new modes, and dozens of new cars, Forza Horizon 4 just won't stop getting bigger. The newest addition to the long list of activities crammed into Playground Games' open world racing juggernaut is the Horizon Super 7, a brand new mode that allows players to participate in custom-built racing, driving, and stunt-based challenges made by other players, plus the ability to create and share their own. So, Mike, after all that, running through it before we get into our big topics for this week, anything you want to run back and dive into a little bit?
I will say that I did take an abnormally long time on the previous section, but luckily most of the stuff in this section were not, something to just ignore, but we have something big coming down next. So I will just quickly say the ZeniMax news is huge. I'm really stoked to see what they bring together, because they have been poaching talent now. You heard all the games that they've pulled from Destiny, Red Dead, Shadow of Mordor, like XCOM. There's a lot of chefs in the kitchen, or cooks in the kitchen, if you will. I'm just curious to see if there's too many. Hopefully that's not the case. And outside of that, I will say that the Epic Games not planning to not host in-person events. Me being a competitor, obviously LAN's pretty much what everyone plays for, and it's sad that they're already planning to forego having LANs. But with the Fortnite World Cup, people come, they have competitors from all over the world, and I think it's just like in the best interest of everyone for them to just be safe with that. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
So that's the two biggest things that I mean, there's more there, but for sake of time.
No, definitely. Yeah, I agree. And then one thing I did want to throw in there, because it was announced just before we went live, xCloud is coming to iOS and PC in the spring of 2021. It was announced on a blog post from Microsoft earlier today, and nothing really like too crazy with it, but obviously more information is going to be coming soon on that. We'll probably have more information by next week to kind of cover on that, but I at least wanted to throw it in. We've talked about it before, especially too how Phil Spencer has also talked about it before, saying, this is definitely something we're planning for. We're going to eventually get there. It's going to be on, iOS, especially. They're going to figure out a way to get it done with Apple's restrictions and whatnot that they placed on them. And, it's the whole thing with how, to begin with, whenever xCloud was trying to launch, and them saying, oh, well, we need everything, all games need to be rated individually on there, and you have to go through and rate each one that comes through. And it's like, okay. And they said that was for content across the board. And it's like, okay, then why is Netflix on there? Why is it okay for this thing, but not this thing? So I digress. But coming to PC as well is big too, that you'll be able to just stream your games right to a PC. That's anybody, if you have a Chromebook and you want to fucking fire up Doom Eternal, you can now, probably. So, that's exciting. We'll have more information probably on that next week. But at least wanted to get in there before we head into our big topic, which, Mike, let's do that right now. And the first one is a doozy, which I think a lot of people, expected. But it's nice that we're finally getting some bigger details and now have a scope of when this game's coming out. That's right, Halo Infinite's release set for fall 2021, and its first multiplayer map was revealed. This comes from Matt TM Kim over on IGN. As always, link in the description. Go over there, give Matt's article a click, a read, and dive into it and make sure he gets taken care of. So let's dive into it ourselves. 343 Industries has announced that Halo Infinite will ship in fall 2021 and revealed further details on certain aspects of Halo Infinite, including graphics, arts, and customization. In August, 343 and Microsoft announced that it has decided to delay Halo Infinite from its holiday 2020 release date to sometime in 2021. Sorry.
You love the sometime in 2021 comment.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Halo Infinite was originally supposed to be a launch game for the Xbox Series X, but was unable to meet this time frame. Now, Halo Infinite is slotted for sometime in fall 2021 specifically, which narrows down the release window for the next Master Chief adventure. 343 also shared 2 new screenshots from Halo Infinite's multiplayer. Halo Infinite multiplayer will also be free to play as well. Coincidentally, Halo will celebrate its 20th anniversary on November 15th, 2021, something 343 head Bonnie Ross highlighted in a tweet as well. So I kind of broke the article down into really how it was shown into two different sections on the graphics and art improvements, plus the customization options too that Matt kind of goes into and breaks down. It's a really good blog post over on 343's blog that really Joseph Staten, who we've talked about before coming into the project, who is actually now the creative director on the project, which is kind of shocking. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes, but between him and Sketch and the people on there, go over there, give that a read. It's really in depth compared to what we're probably going to go over, and condensing this obviously into a show, but go over there, give it a full read, because it's really, really, in my opinion, really good and really transparent. So let's start with the graphics and art improvements. The most complete look at Halo Infinite was revealed during an Xbox Games Showcase earlier in the summer. However, the demo received blowback after failing to meet expectations, particularly in graphics and art style. 343 addressed these points directly in its new blog post, writing, quote, "The reality is that the art and visuals weren't at the bar we hold for Halo, even in a work-in-progress state," said 343's Director of Art Management, Neil Harrison. Quote, "Much of the feedback we heard from the community aligned with our own views, and we were already committed to doing around things like indirect lighting, material response foliage and tree rendering, clouds, level of detail transitions, and character fidelity," Harrison said. 343 development manager for graphics, Ani Sastre, also added that, quote, "Visual fidelity is a very important goal for Halo Infinite, and the graphics and art team have been continually aspiring and working closely with each other to create the best looking Halo game ever." The developers talked about Craig, the infamous brute, whose emotionless face became a meme. Quote, "I can't confirm that the facial animations on NPC were not fully implemented in the summer build, which resulted in Craig's incredible deadpan, lifeless look," said Harrison. "There's been further work done on the material fidelity and more variety added to Brute's faces. We're also working to add some hairdos and beards, which is something we hadn't gotten to in July. So whilst we have come to love our dear old Craig, he's certainly undergoing a significant makeover." Let's kick it over into the Spartan customization options that they talked about as well. As for online customization, 343 talked about its new, quote, "coding system." Whereas in the past, customization was regulated to simple RGBs in primary and secondary channels, the coding system lets players define color, wear and tear, patterns, and materials on a region-by-region basis on a Spartan or anything in the game, whether it's armor, weapons, vehicles, or even fuel barrels. That means weapon skins will be much more varied in Halo Infinite, and options to change more parts of a Spartan armor, like the helmet attachment, shoulder pads, and visors, are coming. The latest update this latest update is the high-level Halo Infinite community update 343 promised back in November. 343 community director Brian Gerard said that at the time that there will not be a reveal at the Game Awards, as some had theorized. Instead, 343 is delivering its update directly to its community. In the meantime, development on Halo Infinite continues, but not without some shakeups. 343 brought back Halo veteran Joseph Staten to the Halo Infinite development team, while director Chris Lee left. The developers also said that there were no plans to delay Halo Infinite back to 2022. Staten, who is now the creative director of Halo Infinite, says, quote, "We needed more time to do things right. That including pushing hard in the fall, giving the team time to recharge over the holidays, and then coming back in January to finish the game at a healthy pace." Staten also says he has completed the campaign for Halo Infinite twice. Quote, "I could feel the classic Halo 30 seconds of fun beating at the heart of Infinite's world, but I had never felt more powerful, more mobile, more in command of a rich set of tactical choices. This was the Halo we imagined back in 2000, finally come to life, in 20 years of technical and creative innovation." End quote. So, there was a lot to unpack here.
There is.
Considering this is really the first time we've truly heard from 343 directly in terms of, the development of the project, since really it was delayed back in August for the most part. Granted, this is pretty early to say, but, fuck it. This, like I kind of mentioned before, this really is starting to remind me a lot of Hello Games and No Man's Sky. Obviously the work is still primarily yet to be done, and we still have a way to launch, but because overall it seems like people are relatively positive about this update. It was, hey, we hear you loud and clear. Because before, if you ask me, 343 with Halo 4 and Halo 5, the criticisms usually they heard, in my opinion, their actions were much more, hey, we hear you, we don't care. Like,
Yeah.
and not saying, I don't want to say it like that, because I'll never take away from the creative vision of a developer or somebody who is creative on anything, really. If that's their creative division or creative vision of the game or what they want to do, that's totally fine. I have no issue with that. Is what it is. But, you know, hey, if a large portion of people don't really care for it or they're vocal about it, sure, at least maybe take that feedback in, and maybe, you know, hey, we're the people who are buying the game, you know, maybe we want to see, we think you did something so great in this area, you know, we want to see more of that. We want to, you know, but at the same time, I'm also one of those people that, hey, if you believe in this, I want to try to believe in this, so I want to, you know, play it and get my hands on it. I don't want to judge it till I play it, but I digress. But it sounds very much, hey, now being much more transparent in terms of, hey, we hear you. We're taking this feedback in. We're taking it to heart. This clearly, the game isn't ready now. Cool. We're delaying it. You know, Microsoft has given us our blessing because their backs are against the wall with this game as well. So, you know, it is what it is.
The investments made are so, you know, there's a lot of money that has been sunk into Halo at this point that I don't think that they can afford to push it back, you know, much further than 2021.
No, not at all. And I'm glad to see them at one point also say, hey, 2022 isn't an option. We're going to have this done. You know, we feel confident that fall of 2021, which is why I'm glad, you know, really, you know, I think the least shocking thing out of all of this was the fall 2021 release window, because I think a lot of people were in the Halo community and the media pretty much expected that, hey, if you're going back to the drawing board on a few things, take your time with it. If that means, hey, we got to wait 16 months, 18 months, something like that for this game, cool. We want a Halo game that's good. We want a Halo game that, you know, this community is proud to play for a long time. We're proud to support you guys. And we're, you know, stuff like that, where it's almost reminds me of, and granted, these games have been, you know, critically reviewed better and have held up a little bit longer over time compared to, you know, Halo's past two entries. But you see it with Super Smash Brothers and the Melee community wanting to say, hey, this is what we like. We don't want to keep playing this. Give us something that rivals this. And that's understandable to a degree. And I think that's why now you're seeing, you know, more people start to transition to Ultimate being this Ultimate thing. But I digress. It's kind of the same premise, at least. But what I think is really interesting about this whole thing, if you ask me, is that Joseph Staten is now the working creative director on this project. After not only, you know, Chris Lee's recent departure as game director, but also the previous creative director in Tim Longo last year, I believe it was, it was last year. And Mary Olson, the executive producer. But Staten was really only seemed to, at least in my opinion, and from what a lot of people seemed to be, was being brought in as more of a consulting role to kind of, you know, help land the plane type of thing. Like, not compared to, hey, now you're creative director on this game. Now you are the Cory Barlog of God of War. You are the Brian Intihar of Insomniac Games with Spider-Man. You are the face of this game moving forward now. You know, so that to me is shocking. And, you know, I know we've talked about this game ad nauseum. But that's for good reason. Like you were saying, Mike, that this is Microsoft's current biggest project, not to mention this is potentially the most expensive game ever developed, period. Hard stop. Like, a lot of people are anticipating this game is going, from what a lot of people have heard, and now the delay as well, that this is going to be the most expensive game of all time developed. Good, bad, and different. But also that, you know, 343's potential, this being 343's really potential last chance at this franchise of doing a game. What does this update say to you, Mike, as someone who is just so, like I always say, intrinsically tied to this franchise in general? What do you think about, you know, some of the changes? They were still really early to tell from some of the screenshots we saw and some of the looks at the weapons and skins and stuff like that. You know, what were you able to tell from these screenshots and from the art style and stuff like that? And really, what do you think about our first look at the coding system too, that, you know, 343 talked about earlier this year when it comes to Spartan customization, you know, and it did get a little bit of, you know, kickback saying, oh, well, if you know, it was going to be one way to monetize this game. And that, I think, was where we're seeing that pop up now that we know, hey, Halo Infinite's multiplayer is going to be free to play. Okay, well, they got to find a way to make money off this game. Okay, it's just like any other game. You can buy skins, you can do whatever, yada, yada. But just in general, what is your vibe off of this whole update, I guess?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, the easiest way for me to kind of dissect this entire announcement that's really important in my opinion for the future of Halo is to kind of start to divide things up into certain categories. I think is the easiest way for me and you to tackle it. So I think that's the way I'm going to go here. Is I'm going to start by breaking down some of just the art style and campaigny things about the game, stuff that's a little bit more casual. And then I think what I would like to do is I did get a little bit of feedback from a listener, about just specifically wanting my direct opinion about just in general how Halo is going to rebound competitively and just with the game in general. So I think the first thing I want to really tackle is the art direction comment that was made, most importantly, and then building that into the campaign and what that looks like. So to start off, we hear and we see, and Travis kind of shared the quote with us that basically there was a bailout for how poorly Craig the Brute was art, art design wise.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I'm really going to counter to that, and I'm not going to disagree that I'm sure that the game was not done, obviously, because the game's not done now, but you can't bullshit a bullshitter when it comes to this. And there's no other way for me to mince words there. It's just, I'm a salesperson. I've always had a salesy personality. I'm not like over the top down your throat sales, but I can convince
bust out the snake oil.
I'm not a snake oil salesman, but I'm usually pretty convincing with my arguments, and for a lot of different reasons. But my main point to this in particular is I don't see how you can say that Craig's facial, he says further work done on the material fidelity and more variety added to brute faces. How are you going to have an 8-minute demo that showcases your game and have something like a close-up shot like that be so botched? I don't buy that for a second, that it was just piss poor. It not only is it piss poor planning, but it's also just a neglect for the truth, which was that's how the art design wanted to be. That's the way the game was art designed. Yeah. If that's the way that you designed the game to be in an art style direction, like that's one thing. Like just own up to it and say, our bad. Because you brought up a good point where you don't want to shit on someone's artistic like goals and views and certain people, different
the actual
strokes, different
vision
folks.
of the game that they're creating. Like it's like anybody who really creates anything, it's like, okay, well, you could not like it, that's fine, but to go out there and say, well, I just don't want this because you made it this way and it needs to be this way and it needs to well, no, it doesn't need to be that way. Now if people are like, hey, we really like this way, can you maybe implement some of that over time? Like, yeah, I'm open to like people saying that. I don't think that's a bad thing. That's people who love this franchise and, hey, I really enjoyed this. I'd love to see more of this. But people also need to, like, in my opinion, need to just be like, for example, the way The Last of Us is. Okay, cool. You may say X, Y, and Z. I don't like this because of this. Well, it's not a bad game because of those things. It's just creative, or it's like, because of creative decisions that they made with the game, because you don't like it, that doesn't intrinsically make it bad, or stuff like that. That it's like, people who create games shouldn't feel bad about those things because they made it that way. Now, if it's broken, it doesn't work, it doesn't make sense, stuff like that, cool, that I can understand. But to go out there and say, oh, I don't like Halo 5 because of the way it looks, solely because of that, it's a bad game. Well, no, that's not true. It's not a bad, that's because you don't like the way it looks, and that's okay, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game. Now, the writing in that game, and from what 343 has even said, hey, they missed the mark on that one. Okay, cool. Same with the marketing and stuff like that. That's all stuff that can be judged pretty fairly, and I think 343 has owned up to that in my opinion, for, quite a few years now. But when people go out there and say like, oh, they didn't want to make this game, well, technically they are making the game for us, but they're making the game. They're looking at making this game. They're putting their creative vision into this game. And that shouldn't be altered just because, fucking Johnny from Ohio doesn't like, two people being in a lesbian relationship. Well, that doesn't mean the game's bad. Like,
right.
It's stuff like that. I didn't want to completely derail that conversation that I thought that you were having.
No, you're good. I think that, it's a good back and forth, because my main point to this is like, you're saying, people shouldn't be shat on for their art direction solely because that's the way it looks. And I agree with you. But this is the kind of like the argument or the comparison I would make is like, did you guys ever have like someone when you were a kid, like in your high school, whether you went to a small school or a big school, that were like, they were in a band and their band was really cool to them, but when they made music, you were like, yeah, dude, your music's not any good. And you didn't want to tell them that because they're like your friends, because, you have like personal relationships with these people. I kind of look at this art direction in a way of like someone making a band or making this music or a genre of music and nobody liking it. But the problem is when you're a development studio like this, the fucking number one job of yours is to fucking sell and to make money. And if you make something that nobody likes, that's not going to help you sell anything, right?
True. Yeah. But you do have to, there is a degree of reading the room, Yeah, definitely.
And the fact that, the campaign has been completed multiple times is fantastic, because what that means to me is they're spending more time on multiplayer. And I think that campaign-wise, the fact that it's already done is really promising, because now they're going to really have a lot of time to work out a lot of the bugs and a lot of the kinks, and they can still make some small tweaks. And it's like, I don't like the way that I don't like the flow of this conversation between characters, or I don't like this storyline. They can still make those little tweaks, which is awesome, and I'm happy for that. And I'm glad that, while they're not necessarily straight up saying, hey, our art direction was dog shit, we fixed it, they're beating around the bush in that way, which is nice, because they're not trampling on the art directors before, which I think is a professional thing to do. That's how I feel about single player and just the art direction in general. Now, like breaking into the multiplayer thing, which is something that one of my friends, Ryan, from the Halo community, who was a draft teammate, potential teammate for real, just a good dude that I've filled in for scrims for his teams and stuff, and he's just really into Halo, and he's not one of those people that I'm friends with that are just Halo 3 fans. Like, I only want to compete in Halo 3 or Halo 2. I won't compete in anything else. Ryan competes in Reach, and he's willing to play Halo 5, and he asked me what my thoughts are, particularly about the Infinite news, and I've shared a little bit about that, but also what will it take for Halo to be competitive again? And that is, I'm going to take that as in like the competitive gaming landscape, because there was a point in time in North America where Halo was the creme de la creme, and I'm just gonna go into it in a few different ways, and in a way that I don't think a lot of people who know me would think that I would go at this. So to put it straight, I have openly talked badly about Halo 5. I will attack Halo 5 for certain things, and I have even recently tried to get back into Halo 5 a little bit, just because I'm like, they've removed a lot of the stuff that I didn't like about the game, competitively speaking, and maybe it deserves another shot. And realistically speaking, the game on my Xbox One is so poorly optimized. The heavy aim that is present, that people say, oh, heavy aim doesn't exist. It exists when you have an old Xbox. I get almost borderline motion sickness from it because the frame rates are so bad on my old Xbox One. And you know what? That's okay. I have an old Xbox One, but I'm not running out there buying Xbox Series X to compete in Halo 5. It's just not happening. Not only is the money not there, my passion for that game in particular just isn't there. And that's not 343's fault. It is what it is. But there are a lot of people out there that are enjoying Halo 5. So I won't say, and I've said this 100 times on different episodes, that I don't think that Halo 5 is truly a bad game multiplayer-wise. Campaign, it left a lot to be desired. We won't talk about that right now, because I'm now into the multiplayer section. But strictly speaking, from the multiplayer standpoint, if the game was supported a little bit more out of launch. So you had Quindel Idioto running the show over there, and he just comes on to different interviews and he just bold-faced lies. We're all about sandbox, we're all about 4v4 fair spawns, we're all about this, we're all about that. Like that, the only thing that was true is everyone started on the same field. Outside of that, like everything he said was just 100%, bold-faced lies to try to get people to give it a chance, basically. And I gave it a chance. I got the champion rank, and on launch night, and I did play for about 5 days. I played matchmaking, 5 days of playtime. There's people out there that are critics of games that give a review after 8 hours of gameplay. I played the game for 5 fucking days, so I played it a lot. I didn't play it a lot, but I played it enough. And the problem with Halo 5, 100%, was the fact that people were crying and saying like 343, like just please, like just log on and remove this, just log on and tweak this. All you have to do is go into the dev kit and fucking do this. Just remove this gun from the game, and it's gonna make the quality of life so much better. And 343 was so stubborn, and just like for an entire 6-month, 1-year period, we're playing with storm rifles, people crouching around the corners because radar is just wide open, and like people are just sitting there and they kill you in 3 seconds. The guns were unbalanced. It wasn't fun. Some of the game types were fun, strongholds and stuff, but the biggest problem with Halo 5's off the rip was the imbalance in weapons that were just awful. The shoulder charging and the ground and pounding were fucking terrible. Like those things have been remedied. And I did play, 6 or 7 games recently. And besides like the screen tearing and stuff like almost making me physically ill from looking at it, the sliding, the thrusting, the shooting with a pistol, like it's one of the hardest games to shoot in Halo history. Like between like auto aim and bullet magnetism, Halo 2 and Halo 1 are relatively easy to shoot. Halo 3 was weird to shoot because the bullet registration and the projectile weapons, that was the first time that projectile had been used. So it was a little bit different. And Halo 5, strictly speaking from a competitive standpoint, I can see the allure to it, especially after they did make the adjustments a year after people were begging for it. I can understand that, but the matchmaking system for Halo 5 was pretty solid too. It wasn't the traditional 1 to 50 ranking system that people love, but when I was a champion, I think I was like a champion 21 on release night or whatever, and then I was an Onyx, and then you have a number beside your Onyx, which is basically like Elo, like from League of Legends. I thought that was really good, actually. And there's other things in Halo 5 that I think were great. Like the perfect medal is probably the best medal, one of the best medals of all time in Halo, and it came in Halo 5. You hit that perfect 5 shot with the pistol, and the announcer says perfect, and it's like it's awesome, and it's just so smooth how it comes through. So I look at these screenshots of the game, and I see a map. And clearly sprint's going to be involved, which we knew. And the reason why I hated Halo 5, you didn't hear anything about me hating on sprint, hating on thrusting, hating on advanced movement. That's not the reason why I hated Halo 5. So I want people to know that I don't think that advanced movement doesn't have a place in Halo. The year's 2020, all the games have that. Games are evolving. That's great. And clearly you can see a multiplayer map that, whether it's a Warzone map or it's going to be an arena-based map, you can see a map that has highly elevated ledges, which means that there's a high potential that the floating pack that you would do, like if you zoomed in and hit A, or your jump button or whatever, or your sprint button on Halo 5 that would make you like levitate and float. It looks like that's going to be back in. Sprinting's back in. We see at the bottom there, we see a pickup that looks like an active camouflage, or it could be like a decoy person like was in Reach. So that's interesting. We see the rocket launcher, we see the sniper rifle, and we see some other pictures of the Spartans. Now for me, multiplayer wise, what I saw from the screenshots is, it's a lot like Halo 5's art style, which I wasn't a big fan of, but I also wasn't a hater. It is what it is. Like I can take that art style. It wasn't bad. The map looks to be asymmetrical, which is a problem for competitive games, because I feel like outside of a very few examples, asymmetrical maps don't work competitively speaking. You'd primarily want to play on symmetrical maps. Symmetrical maps are the best for Slayer if you want to use Slayer, but I'm hoping, and by this game, Team Slayer kind of makes its way out, and you're left with like Neutral Bomb, Capture the Flag, King of the Hill, and Oddball. And where Oddball really shines, and King of the Hill even to a certain extent shines on asymmetrical maps. So I think that there is a place for asymmetrical maps. We saw Lockout, we've seen Guardian. It works, but it takes a lot of focus and it takes a special thing. There's a lot of dead space in the bottom middle of this map, which is concerning for me because one of the things I didn't like about Halo 5 in particular was I kind of when I was writing my response to this and kind of looking at this leak and this announcement was like with Halo 5 you could put yourself in a really poor position on the map and you could get out of it with sprinting and other abilities. Like you could kind of get out of your boneheaded mistake. And that kind of lends itself more like League of Legends with MOBAs. Like League of Legends have flash and you have other abilities that you can get your way out of really dumb decisions. And Halo 3 and Halo 2 and Halo 1 was super punishing. With not only was it punishing because you were going to get a death, but where you spawn your teammates can affect that game so much, especially Halo 3. Halo 2 you can get spawn trapped a little easy, but Halo 3 you can really play the game based on how you're spawning your teammates. And you couldn't make boneheaded decisions because you were going to be punished with a death, and then you were going to spawn in a really bad spot, and then you were going to spawn your teammates there. So your mistake really compounds and builds upon each other. So to me, this open dead space in the bottom middle is really concerning because it looks like they're going to allow people to make these bad decisions and get out of it. Because I compare Halo 3 and Halo 2 and the classic Halos to like Dota, where Dota's a lot more punishing as a MOBA, where if you make a bad decision, you're going to die. League of Legends, you can get out of it mechanically. And there's nothing wrong with either way. I'm just a bigger fan of Dota death knells with decisions in first person shooters. That's just the way I am. So that's concerning to me. I would have liked to see a better map because I think like people are like, how can you look at this map and think it's awful? Well, if you look at the second screenshot, I see a little shelf up in the back top of the area where it looks like there's a power weapon up there. There's a doorway up to the like. There is a lot of bad stuff happening here that I just don't like. All the different levels, it's just like Halo 5's maps. And your game Halo 5 was successful to a certain extent, but there was a lot of negatives with it, and some of the maps were really bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like my honest to goodness answer to a lot of that. Now, where do I think Halo needs to go to be competitive again?
Mm-hmm.
You can throw a ton of money at the problem and say that you're going to have a $2 million prize pool at the end of the year, and people are going to suck it up and play it just because they want the money.
Mm-hmm.
But your game has no staying power. People are still competing in Halo 3 because we love the game. People are still playing Melee because they love the game. Truthfully, what you need to do as Halo to get back onto the scene is you need to start. A free game is really great because you don't have to pay to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest problem is you have to make the game good. And what I'm seeing from these screenshots isn't saying that the game's going to be bad just because of these screenshots. Competitively speaking, there are concerning elements to these screenshots. And now this is only a single map, and it's 10 still images. I can't really bash it too much because I'm sure things are going to change. But realistically speaking, what I see is just there's a lot of cause for concern, just like with the art direction release we saw with the campaign. So I'm hoping that this map is just like a throwaway map, like some of the beta maps from Halo 3. And we also didn't get an announcement. We were supposed to have a beta, and that would help tremendously with this game, is like being able to get in there and give them raw feedback and let them get data, but we don't have that yet. So I am concerned. A portion that I didn't touch on is like the wear and tear on the Spartans' bodies. I don't really give a shit. I don't really give a shit to have skins at all in the game, and I don't really give a shit of armor. I'll use the Mark 6 armor from Halo 3, and I don't care. Like
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't get me going. But it's proven that in Halo 5, one of the big prize pool generators was the skins. So
Mm-hmm.
there is a place for it in the game, and all other people are really going to love it. And I think that when you have a free game, you have to make money somewhere, and it's going to help them build prize pools for multiplayer. And when you have a free game and you let them get skins or other add-ons that they want, it's going to help you build prize pools without, you having to foot the bill per se. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So those are some of the bigger things that I see, and how I feel the game could really, get a lot better. And that's not going to be like my full answer because I don't think I can really get everything I really want to say. It's tough, but that's truthfully what I think you need to do, is get a good game and you need to give people a reason to want to play the game. And you have to be quicker with your responses when someone gives you feedback. You know, we've been playing in these Halo 3 tournaments on Face It that are single elimination, and nobody wants to get on at 7 p.m. on a Friday night and torch the rest of their night because they show up and they play one series and get beat. Like, nobody wants to show up and do that. People just don't want to do that.
Right.
So, you know, we've been giving them feedback, and they're saying, oh, we can't put a double elimination bracket into our website or whatever. And 343's just been, you know, putzing around because they have Halo 5 again. And it's like, if you want our feedback and you want to truthfully listen to us, that's great. As a competitive community, you need that. And you know what, Halo, you're to a point where you can't be ignorant to your competitive scene, you know, anymore. You can't just say, well, they're going to play the game regardless, like Call of Duty devs do. Like, Call of Duty is going to release a dog shit game and people are going to play it because the money's there and it is what it is. Like, that's the way Call of Duty is. But the popularity for Halo just isn't there. You can't keep putting turds on a platter and handing it to people and saying, you're going to enjoy this game and like it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because as we've seen with all the big talent, it's just not, it's not the case. People are going to move on. And there's already a ton of people that have moved on. So if you want a lot of these big names like Snipedown and Frosty and those guys to come back from Call of Duty and Apex, you need to have a good game. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head from my perspective, at least, that, you know, you've always been much, much, much more deeper into, obviously, the competitive end of Halo, where I've been much more, and Adam, even to, you know, the casual end. We love, you know, we'll still play a lot of multiplayer, but you've been in much more of the actual esport end of it, where, you know, we played more on the casual end. And my biggest thing has always been, as long as there is actual content there, and this is why I've thought the move to bring MCC to PC, like, and I just checked the other day, like, I have, like, over 8 days into MCC lifetime, which, like, isn't that much. It's only, like, 200 hours or something like that, but, like, you know, I put a lot of that time in, and a lot more has been on PC because of the amount of stuff that 343 has thrown into it, from not only, you know, hey, here's, you know, X, Y, and Z map pools that you could be playing, or, you know, limited game modes or things like that, but the fact that they have seasonal content in terms of, like, the Battle Pass-esque version, or Battle Pass unlocks that you get, that, hey, cool, this, you know, for the next 2 months or whatever, I'm unlocking Halo 3 skins. And that's fucking dope. Like, that is awesome. I love that shit. Like, that is the reason why, like, sometimes I'll check into Fortnite, and I'll get into Fortnite for a little bit, because they have a season that I love. Like, you know, whenever they had DC stuff going on, this season they have, you know, Mandalorian stuff going on. I fucking love Star Wars. So, like, I want to jump in and try to get that stuff. And same with, you know, last season was Marvel. Like, that makes me want to get into it, because, like, on the rare chance I do want to play Fortnite, fuck, if I can get, you know, a Wolverine skin from just playing the game through the Battle Pass or whatever, fuck yeah, I'm going to do that. That's, like, content that keeps me coming back to those games. And I think 343 has really adapted well on that end for, you know, not just, you know, on the esports end, but more so for the casual player who jumps in and just says, you know, I love playing social games. You know, I'll play ranked too, you know, but I love just getting in, playing some matchmaking games, and, you know, having a good time. It's my decompressing game, you know, stuff like that, like, I jump into play all the time. And, you know, from the campaign end, and that's where more I line up to, because I love the lore of Halo. I love how those campaigns really, in my opinion, set the stage for cinematic first-person narrative games, really, overall. They weren't, like, you know, RPGs, CRPGs, anything like that, where, you know, we're talking Elder Scrolls and stuff like that, but more so that their barrier to entry was really, really low to get into, to learn how to play, there wasn't, you know, skill trees or anything like that really starting out with, but all you had to do was learn realistically how to move, aim, and shoot. That's it. You know, and relatively, a lot of people could pick that up on twin sticks after, you know, even, you know, people who are a little bit older or don't play games that much, they could pick it up and learn how to do it pretty simply. The fact that, you know, they're starting to, I think, lean back into that a little bit, where, sure, they're expanding, they're making this be much more open levels, compared, almost akin to meshing the feeling of Halo CE, which it is clear this game is very much leaning into Halo CE's roots. This is wanting to be the next Halo CE. This is a soft reboot. Clearly, this game is to set the future for Halo and being very much a mixing of both new and old, but obviously pulling very much on those heartstrings of old to get, boomers like you and me back into it. But it's also taking this approach which I really appreciate from Gears 5, that you see these sprawling levels, that it is kind of open world, but it isn't to an extent. Like, you have boundaries to it, but it pushes you to do exploration. It pushes you to learn more about this environment that you're in. It pushes you to explore a little bit and get more out of some of the things that you typically wouldn't get in a game that you expect like this. They let you get more into actual character development with them. There is more environmental storytelling. I mean, hell, you look at, this is the first time really that we're seeing traditional looking Forerunner environments around there and structures and things like that, because in my opinion, in 4 and 5, like, the Forerunner tech that we saw there and the actual Forerunners and stuff like that, to me, I did not like their design. It was too,
Right.
it was too, what do I want to say? It was like too Space Odyssey-esque, like bright, shiny, comparative to what I think.
It was overdone to like almost a level of blandness.
Yeah, if one word or if one phrase comes to mind, it's like lens flare when it comes to thinking about them. When you look back at, Bungie's take on the Forerunner tech and stuff like that, it was ancient, but it was also futuristic, and it blended that well, that you look in that environment, it's like, man, that structure's unlike anything I've ever seen before. It looks so advanced, but it also looks like it had been there forever, where you get to the actual Forerunner tech that you've seen in 4 primarily, and it's like, okay, well, this looks like it literally was spit shined, like, right there. It just didn't fit with what was going on in that universe, in my opinion. Where now we're starting to see a return to that almost, where we're starting to see a little bit more, matte textures. We're seeing stuff that looks like it is, we're going back to a Halo ring from what it looks like. It looks like we're actually getting back into grounding ourselves into these environments that so many people fell in love with, that led them into the lore, like me, who loves, learning more about this world that was there, that we've only heard piecemeals through just the games. So I overall, with this update that they gave to me, I've said it a lot, that I feel like more and more 343 has become transparent over time with how they approach their content, which, like you said, there was a time when that just wasn't true. There wasn't anything about them that a lot of the community didn't want to have. And that's where I think you saw a lot of the dark days of Halo come from, of when both with 4 and then going into 5 too. In 5, there's been much more support, but especially like 4, when Halo 4 came out, a lot of people praised it out of the box, but nothing happened then after it. They just left it. Like, they didn't update it. They didn't do anything. They didn't support it, competitively. There was nothing. They did one tournament, I think, right? Like one actual championship tournament.
Yeah. Well, MLG ran one before it was really released, but like, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with Halo 4 was like, you didn't, for the first time, like in the history of Halo, you didn't descope someone when you shot them. Like,
yeah,
I just like, it was just so bizarre. And it seemed like they had moved on to Halo 5, which, like, cool. And then Halo 5 came out and it sucked. And you're like, wait a minute, what's happening here?
Yeah, exactly. So to me, like I said, it seems like they've become much more transparent in how they talk to their community. I mean, how we're already seeing it with the delay and taking the feedback in of saying, and me personally, I didn't mind the art style. Like, I'm one of those people, I don't fucking care if the game looks like it's out of a fucking, like, Apple II computer. Like, I really don't. If it's a fun game to play, the gameplay is great, hell, the writing is great, stuff like that. Like, there's so much more to me than graphics and art style, that an art style is a choice where graphical representation necessarily isn't at times, where the actual art style of that, it was being a mesh of classic Halo and the newer feel to it in a way. I liked. I thought that was great in terms of how it was presented. But I can completely understand the people who are like, hey, that doesn't vibe with me. And also, to some of the animations and things like that were very rough around the edges, where you couldn't like ignore that stuff, where it's like, okay, that wasn't a choice. That was just, this game is not ready and they're clearly pushing this through. That's not how a ship has ever landed before in any game before, like classic or not. That just doesn't look good. So like stuff like that is completely understandable. But, you know, like I said, it takes a lot for somebody to put content out that they create to the ether to be then judged and whatever. You know, I'll always side with devs to a degree, obviously, but, you know, unless bad shit starts happening or whatever, you understand. But to me, this shows the growth of 343, and I'm starting to gain a little more trust. I still think this game's going to be good. I will stand by that until I play this game and it's bad. Like, I think they're finally starting to hit, even just from what they shown, what Halo is and what people loved about Halo. I don't think the gameplay is what got a lot of people jammed up. I think it was some of the actual, you know, presentational ends of the game is what people were, that they could tell it was being rushed. I think a lot of people just knew it was being rushed to launch with this console, and it would have been a great narrative to have that happen and have it be great and whatnot. But so many people are just in tune with gaming around the world that it's, you know, hey, we gotta, you can't kind of pull the wool over people's eyes at times, where it's like, okay, just delay it. It's fine. We're cool with it.
Yeah.
Like, we want this game. The amount of people who are going to play this game alone, one, not only of it being free to play, but two, being in Game Pass day one on PC and Xbox, is going to be astronomical. This game's going to have a huge player base right off the bat, period. Like, it's just going to. And it's going to have much more staying power, in my opinion, than a Hyperscape, than a Realm Royale, than a whatever. Like, it's going to have much more of a staying power than a lot of these, you know, free-to-play games that you see pop up from big publishers that never really hang around too much. Like, I think this is going to... I think Halo has a chance to really, like, dethrone, like, an Apex or something like that, as this is the free-to-play option for when people want to get in and play a multiplayer shooter. This could be that option. So, I'm really... I'm high off of this update. We got a lot more to go over, so I don't want to drag on it too long, but I'm really appreciative of that deep dive that you gave on that, because that's a lot of information that I don't know, like, that I'm not familiar with on that end of the competitive end, that I always lean on you. I'm like, yo, you tell me what you think's right, wrong, and different about this, because, you know, you've been in the trenches with all of this for a long time, where I've been kind of, you know, sitting in the stands, kind of looking and seeing this stuff from the outside looking in. But no, I definitely am. I'm positive about this moving forward. It seems like a lot of people are positive. I think a lot of people are just thankful that it seems like both 343 and their community are on the same page for once. In my opinion, that's what it really seems like, and I'm really thankful for that on both ends. Just from me being somebody who sympathizes with devs and supports creative vision and things like that, I'm happy about that, but I'm also happy about the fan base being like, hey, we're excited about this product coming out. We're excited about wanting to get our hands on this. When's the beta coming? When's flighting coming? Stuff like that. Like, I'm all for that. So,
something I want to before we move on, one last quick hit.
Mhm.
I am curious to hear your opinion on it. Do you think that, like, 343 was being strong-armed into releasing this, and they kind of used this as an excuse to be like, tell, like, Microsoft, like, hey, this just isn't ready, we shouldn't be showing it, and Microsoft's like, well, you guys are showing it, so they show this, like, half-released, half-assed thing. And so do you think, like, in some sick and twisted way, do you think it's like good guy 343 actually saved the day at some point? Or do you just think that they're so incompetent? Like, I know some people would argue that they're just so incompetent they didn't know any better, but I want to give them the credit, like, the benefit of the doubt, and say, like, maybe they knew it was so bad, but they were like, Microsoft didn't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit of both on all ends. I think Microsoft's guilty of saying, hey, we want this game to ship with the launch of our Xbox. Do you think that could happen? And I think, like many devs at that scale, 343 was saying, yeah, we could do that. Well, let's start planning for that. Well, they started development as Halo 5 was launching. And obviously, after seeing the, you know, backlash that happened with Halo 5 and the response to it, both critically and commercially, they obviously tweaked that a bit and said, hey, we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to change some things with this. What do we want this to be this clear that now we need to, almost reboot this franchise, and that, we need to find a different way to, present this to our audience that they're going to be happy to play this game. But knowing that, I think both sides were probably like, yeah, this could happen, right? Yeah, we could do this. Like, I think there's accountability on all ends, where Microsoft will approach them saying, hey, how great would this be? And them saying, yes, let's aim for that. And I think to a degree, and we're starting to see, I think it was on 343's end at some of their management. Obviously, I think there was clearly that there was butting heads, that some wanted to go one direction, others wanted to say, no, this clearly isn't ready yet. And I don't want to put words in people's mouths or whatever, or, we may never know the actual truth, but from somebody looking in on the outside, knowing and having a good idea of how game development works and how, sometimes studios handle things now, it's clear to see that there was definitely some conflict between visions. And if your creative director leaves, your executive producer leaves, and then your game director leaves, there's clearly something that there's a sect of there that was going one way and another, and the other sect going another way.
Right.
That I think that, if you ask me, I think there was just accountability on both ends. That 343 wanted that to happen, but then when they came to them saying, hey, we don't, I would, it seems much more like Microsoft understood, because 343's vision wasn't there yet. And I think Microsoft just knows, hey, one, we're in X amount of millions of dollars in this game. This game just needs to come out. It needs to be good. We need to justify this money somehow. But also, too, Microsoft doesn't have necessarily, like, Master Chief's on the, if you ask me, on the Mount Rushmore of gaming, because he has had a heavy cultural impact, not in the 2010s necessarily, but in the 2000s, in that first real, bigger leap in gaming from, hey, we just did 3D graphics to, we're really, like, this is how we really envision 3D graphics right off the bat. Like, that first big jump to actual, like, you could tell what's on the screen in 3D. Like, he hit in such, that game franchise hit in such a pivotal time that he is on the Mount Rushmore of gaming because so many people know him. But that's Xbox's only mascot, where you look at PlayStation and you see Nathan Drake, you see Ellie, you see Joel, you see fucking Kratos, you see all these characters. You look at Nintendo, you think of Nintendo, oh, you think of Mario, oh, you think of Link, you think of Zelda. Like, there's so many, their catalog is so much deeper than Xbox, and because both have been around an extra, not only PlayStation an extra generation than Microsoft, but Nintendo for 3 extra generations, where it's like their catalogs are much deeper. Microsoft's always going to be playing catch up in that degree. But now we're seeing that, hopefully, obviously, with more studios popping up, that's going to change. So I think Microsoft just saw the importance of this. This could potentially be our last attempt with this character. Then what the fuck do we do after that? We don't have anybody. Oh, Nintendo in their, our newest Mario game was a stinker. We got to hit with Zelda. Oh, our newest Zelda game was a stinker. Oh, we got to hit with Mario. Like, they have that. They at least have a backup. Same with Sony. We just don't have, Xbox doesn't have that option necessarily. Gears of War isn't as well known as a second tier franchise, their second tier franchise, as a, Uncharted with The Last of Us, or, hell, now Spider-Man and God of War and, all these things compared to, or even a Mario and Zelda. Like, it's not. So I think it's so interlaced that I just think there was such an understanding at that point that this game just needs to be fucking delayed. It needs to be right. Like, everyone was on the same page. This is not right. We need to get busy. So, whew. All right, Mike, let's move on to our second news article. These are much shorter. I figured that was going to be a much bigger segment of the show. So, all right, let's move into our second one. CD Projekt Red plans to address Cyberpunk 2077's epilepsy triggers. This comes from Chris Holt over on Engadget. As always, link in the description. After the embargo lifted on Cyberpunk 2077 reviews on Monday, reports emerged that the game includes strobing effects or rapid blinking lights that could trigger epileptic episodes. Developer CD Projekt Red has responded to those concerns with its plans on addressing them. The game's end-user license agreement does include a seizure warning. Quote, Cyberpunk 2077 may contain flashing lights and images which may induce epileptic seizures, the EULA reads. Quote, if you or anyone in your household has an epileptic condition, please consult your doctor before playing Cyberpunk 2077. Given that many players don't bother to read the EULAs, fair, that warning's easy to miss. Many other games include more prominent photosensitivity warnings. CD Projekt Red wrote in a tweet that it's, quote, working on adding a separate warning in the game. The development team is also looking into a permanent solution it will implement, quote, as soon as possible. Hopefully that will include ways to turn off the strobing effects. There are several parts of the game that feature rapid blinking lights, including the core brain dance feature through the character through them relives certain experiences. In her important PSA about Cyberpunk's 2077 epileptic triggers, Game Informer's Liana Rupert noted main character V is given a headset that, quote, fits over both eyes and features a rapid onslaught of white lights and red blinking LEDs, much like the actual device neurologists use to trigger seizures in real life when they need to trigger one for diagnosis purposes. Rupert said such a sequence caused her to have a, quote, bad seizure as well. She advised photosensitivity players to look away or close their eyes whenever a headset is introduced. Unfortunately, Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't have an audio description option to guide players through those sequences if they're not looking at the screen. This feels so much like well, technically we did say that seizures could happen because of strobing, but considering the fact that, like, literally almost all modern, like, AAA titles include like fucking big ass warnings as you're getting ready to play the game. Every time you start up a game, there's, hey, here's all the like engines we use, and here's, our publisher logo. And then it's usually like warning some, sequences within this game could cause epileptic seizures or something. Like there's clearly, like, I'm saying like 80% of games I play anymore that are semi-modern are going to have this in there. I don't necessarily, considering also too, just the sole fact on the heavy emphasis on accessibility anymore, that most now games for the past 2 years, when you boot them up, half the time they're greeted with an actual like audio descriptive settings that they're like, where it has the robot voice coming on. Would you like to turn this off? Like I just don't buy it. Like you could have clearly put this on here. It's Cyberpunk. Like, sure, it's an easy fix for at least the warning, but like with how detailed this game's photo mode alone is that we talked about last week, it just shocks me that the strobing effect couldn't have had a toggle at some point as a feature, like right out the box, personally. And I know game development is extremely hard. It's never as easy as you think, but if you're giving players that amount of accessibility features to take photos and turn settings on and off and whatnot and freeze the game and do all of those things, it feels like it could be achievable, in my opinion, but I get it. The aesthetic alone of the game plays into this creative vision we keep talking about on this episode of being this futuristic wild, wild west of sorts with clubbing and stuff like that. Like, when you think Cyberpunk, you think of, neon strobing lights and stuff like I get it. But with a game this big and looking to capture such a huge audience after how successful and critically acclaimed The Witcher was, and how many more people are getting into this game because of CD Projekt Red's real, in my opinion, coming out party with The Witcher 3 5 years ago to a casual audience, shouldn't you be looking to make the like metaphorical net that you have as wide as possible so you can get the biggest cast possible, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, that's just pretty much business 101, right? Like,
right. I mean, that's just business alone, let alone just, I mean, the amount of people who play games is at an all-time high, so you have to imagine the amount of people who need these accessibility features just to be able to play these games is at an all-time high as well, that you need to adapt and change. The gaming industry is changing so much as it is. Like, this is common sense stuff at this point.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that something like this gets overlooked. Now, obviously, like you said, game dev is hard, but it does feel like in 2020, as you alluded to, people are making gaming more and more accessible. Every single game becomes a little bit more accessible, it feels like. So
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to see them do a little bit more for this, clearly. I think, you brought up a very good idea. Like, why isn't there a text to speech as soon as the game starts? That's a thing. Something to actually grab someone's attention. Because, like you said, ever since I can remember, games have had that warning that you might get a seizure, and I've never had one. But who knows? Maybe this game will make me have. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
don't think, but you just never know. And it is a shame that there might be people that are concerned about their safety that don't want to play it because they're afraid that a seizure is going to happen. Now, maybe they'll release a patch that fixes it, but
Mm-hmm.
after the game has been delayed and everything, it feels like it should be something that comes out on release night.
Yeah, and see, I didn't want to. Clearly, this week is one of the biggest weeks in gaming, with one of the biggest games. I feel pretty safe with this. Biggest games within modern gaming's history in that time coming out today, with Cyberpunk coming out. Technically, release day is tomorrow, but with how the time zones line up and whatnot, North America at 7 p.m. on PC at least. Tomorrow at midnight tonight is whenever anybody else. Midnight tonight Eastern and 9 p.m. Pacific is whenever people on console could play it. So on Xbox, if you have it pre-installed, you could play it right then at midnight. On PC, people like me who are playing it on PC, you could do it at 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, just because of how the PC schedule launch lines up with Poland's time zone, I believe, is how they're doing it. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
so Poland's like 6 hours ahead of us, so that would make they're 5 hours because they don't
Yeah.
do daylight savings times. But yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, so it's 7 p.m. here that we'll be able to play it on the East Coast. So, point being, though, this being such a big game and being the biggest game really that we've seen in a long time, that it boggles my mind that. And it clearly, we didn't talk about reviews this week because, one, if you ask me, I'll be frank, the media hasn't had, the way that CD Projekt Red has handled the distribution of this game has said a lot. That this game is clearly not ready. It's still getting great reviews. It's right now, I believe the PC version is at a 91 on Metacritic, which people are concerned that, oh, that's too low. Fuck out of here. A 91 is fucking fantastic. That is still an absolutely great game. And even a 7 out of 10 is a good game. So I digress. But the fact that media was only given one copy or one key for the game on PC per outlet, let alone no console versions of this game were given out for review, says a lot. That this game is clearly not ready. That while CD Projekt Red is publishing this game themselves compared to the past couple of games where The Witcher 3, for example, was published by WB Games in the US at least, that it's clear that this game is not ready, and CD Projekt Red, I think, was just done spending money on it in terms of getting it for principal development. That I believe they wanted to get this out and just get it in. This is the prime example of a game, and I'm not going to delve on this too long because I'm obviously going to play the game this weekend, and I'm hoping a lot. My schedule's pretty free this weekend, so I'm hoping that it, kind of get sweaty with it a little bit, and obviously if I like it and whatnot. But I'm hoping that next week is to be kind of a little bit deep dive of the review of the actual game, and we can go in and there's some things I want to talk about with certain reviews and compare it to my experiences with the game and whatnot. So I want to table it for them, but this is the perfect example of why, in my opinion, early access needs to become more of a consumer. I don't want to say consumer friendly, it just needs to become more of a regular thing if that's the case. I feel like, me personally, if this game was given early access, one, they wouldn't do it because it would hurt sales. People would buy it less probably, and how often do we see that for console games and whatnot? But this game clearly, just with how it's been developed, with originally, I'm sure, one, it's a PC game first and foremost. CD Projekt Red has been very, very upfront with that, in my opinion, on how they view this game being a PC game. And yeah, it's coming to console as well, but was viewed with its development was so long, and really with how much technology has evolved between then, and aiming for a certain, what their vision of this game has evolved past what I'm sure it was originally, and the tech available and whatnot, and what they're trying to do now with the tech that was available, and them saying, well, do we want to hit this audience that is biggest with Xbox, with PS4 right now, with over 100 million PS4s out there, and a large Xbox audience as well, compared to, do we want to wait and launch this game in the spring on next-gen consoles only that are definitely going to run this game great, and I'm sure the next-gen upgrade and version of the game that they're going to give out for free and sell as well, obviously, but that game's going to include a lot of those things and fix a lot of those things. But it just goes back into the accessibility portion of this on its own feeds into the whole bigger picture, in my opinion, of this game was just not ready to come out. It wasn't. It wasn't ready to come out. It needs to be in the cooker. Hopefully when I play it and the day one patch is on there in a couple of hours, it'll run great and it'll be fun. And I'm going to love the game. And, I'm excited about it still. Who knows? It may not be what I want out of it, but you know what? Everything I've read about it, I loved The Witcher 3 after falling in love with it finally after a couple of years. And I loved dumping, 65 hours into it so far or whatever in my one file. But to be quite honest, I could have went for a 30-hour campaign over a 50-hour campaign of it. And that's just the main campaign. I would have much rather take that. And it seems like Cyberpunk's more in line with that, having a 25-hour campaign or something like that. That's great. And then them saying, oh, the main quest line may be a little more direct than previous games, but it's the side stories, and that's what gets me excited. But the sole fact that technically, accessibility, all these things that just seemed like it was okay, we just got to get this out at this point. And it's that's just, I hate that we see the business end of this shit bleed in too much and hurt all of the hard work, and especially with CD Projekt Red, and we've been hearing about crunch with them and whatnot, all of the hard work, unpaid hard work that has gone into this game go off to the wayside now. And it's negatively reflected on the devs at the end of the day. And this game's going to sell no matter what, so it doesn't matter. They're going to make a ton of money, but whenever you're seeing stuff like this, it's it just falls back on the devs. And realistically, it's probably because they were forced, hey, you know what? We got to get this out by X, Y, and Z. And if you can't fit in there, cool, we're launching without it. We'll get in there eventually. It's okay, well then just fucking delay the game. It's going to sell no matter what. So it's such a weird situation with this game. I'm excited to play it, man. It's still one of my most anticipated games this year, and I'm excited to play it hopefully tonight, tomorrow, whenever. When I get a chance and dive into it this weekend and really get into it. But I'm really curious to see how this game pans out, long term, whenever we get actual, console versions of this game out there, and see what, it really looks, how it really shakes out to be. Because clearly CD Projekt Red did not want anybody to see the console versions of this game. They wanted, the PC version was the best version they could offer, and they gave out one code per place, and that was it for review. And that says a lot, in my opinion. So, Mike, let's head to our last news article for this week real quick. And this one's a quick one because it's pretty straightforward, in my opinion. PAX still plans to host an in-person games festival in 2021 for some reason. This comes from Taylor Lyles over on The Verge, as always, link in the description. Reed Pop and Penny Arcade, the organizers of the PAX Gaming Convention, announced on Friday that they plan to resume PAX East, West, and Unplugged in 2021. Organizers are planning to hold these events as long as it's safe to do so. The organizers announced that they have no plans to hold PAX South this year, but the show will return in 2022, while information on PAX Australia will follow, quote, in the coming weeks. As far as other PAX conventions go, locations remain unchanged, but the dates for PAX East, typically held in March at the Boston Convention and Exhibit Center, have been pushed back to summer. With support from local governments and health officials and, quote, pending an improvement in the global COVID-19 situation, the gaming conventions are slated to return to PAX East in Boston from June 3rd to the 6th, PAX West also will return with a 4-day event running from September 3rd to the 6th, and PAX Unplugged will return from December 10th to the 12th. More information on all 3 events will be shared next year. The last in-person convention was held in February with PAX East. Following COVID-19 safety concerns, organizers enhanced their cleaning and sanitation efforts during the event, but despite intending to hold PAX West in Seattle over Labor Day weekend, organizers canceled the in-person event and shifted to a 9-day online-only conference. So, listen, I like to think that we're realists. Like, we're a little out there, Mike. I think people have been pretty clear. We're getting close to 100 episodes of this fucking show. I think people know we're a little out there, specifically me. I'm a fucking lunatic at times. But when it comes to this whole fucking pandemic thing, I like to think that we've been realist and let science and let logic in general do the talking. Personally, I think Penny Arcade is pretty fucking off their rocker in general if they think that large-scale conventions, like full-go conventions, are going to be good to go by June. Or at least to the degree in which they're envisioning this event being a full-scale, event. Like, they're going to be the ones to kick it all off. Like, even if, in my opinion, even if everything goes exactly according to plan and best-case scenarios happen with the vaccine, by the time it's properly rolled out and people have both shots of it, because there's multiple shots it seems like people are going to have to get for this vaccine, or at least the 2 that are out there, and we're at a comfortable level in terms of the amount of people who have this vaccine physically in them and working at that point, I personally think it's no earlier than fall 2021. As someone whose job kind of dips into event management throughout the year, I get it. You got to plan for something. You got to start building towards this end goal of eventually, doing something. And this once again falls back on our government. I'm sure Penny Arcade and Reed Pop feel backed into a corner like, fuck, we got to make money somehow off of this. We got to do something. We got to financially support this and keep the door, the lights on, the doors open type of thing. And kind of goes back, get pissed at your fucking government, where the fuck are my tax dollars going? Why aren't we getting, business relief here, whatnot. I digress on that, but, considering we haven't really heard anything from the ESA regarding E3, the biggest fucking video game convention and, event of the year next year at all, and how fucking great numbers-wise and viewer-wise digital events have been this past year. If you ask me, they've been a booming success for a lot of different companies, given the amount of, analytics we've seen for them for the most part. Is this the right move, Mike, for PAX, or do they need to kind of just read the room a little bit?
It's tough. I want to say, I want to be optimistic and say, clearly, obviously, life's going to get back to normal, but we just don't know that. Yeah. I do think that...
Oh, we definitely are. And that's the thing. That's why I say I like to think we've been logical. If it's been... If there's room to celebrate right now from what it sounds like with the vaccinations that's going on, and hopefully that's going to speed things up a little bit. I don't think anybody out here is saying man, you know what? I hope this lasts forever. No, I think people want to get back to normal. They just don't want to fucking they don't want to kill off all the elderly right away.
Yeah.
So continue though. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, you're good. I will say that I think, without getting too political, I think that there is going to be I just don't think you cannot get political whenever you make a statement like this. But I honestly see it as I see that there's a great potential that people who get the vaccination will have almost like an ID card on them. That if you don't have this card, you don't have the vaccination and you can't come into our convention. I think that's something that people don't really want to talk about because it is taboo. Absolutely. But I do honestly think that that could be something that maybe they have gotten news from people government officials in Boston that that's actually going to happen with this. So you can host it because we need you to, we need people to start planning for this already and boost our economy. That's all stuff that could be happening behind the scenes. But I do think it might be a little bit of a far-fetched idea to think that this event might happen, but I think it's I don't foresee it happening, but at the same time I do enjoy the optimism of thinking maybe there'll be LAN Halo tournaments next year at some point. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And that's what it's it's shit like that people don't want to necessarily think about, because you kind of get into the whole, like, you know, 1984-esque mentality of thinking about how, you know, the government's watching you and things like that, and you're being super controlled. And those are all legitimate, in my opinion, legitimate concerns to a degree. Like, that's, you know, and that's where I agree that it's like, it's hard to not say things like that and not tend to get a little political, because they're just, you know, they go hand in hand at that point. But, you know, it's just such a, like, some of the stuff that's like, and to me, it completely falls back on people are feeling forced into trying to find ways to just keep the lights on with so many of these things that just don't need to happen right now. I mean, point blank, PAX can continue to do, look at what Digital Revolver did last year, or this year, I mean, with how they showcased their event that was traditionally at E3, that was instead, hey, we partnered with somebody to develop an interactive showcase where you're literally playing a game that we're going to put on Steam, that inside that game are demos and videos of the games we were going to show in our showcase. And you go around and it's an actual fucking game that you go and play for 2 hours, and you get all this new information about games coming out. Like, and people ate that shit up. They fucking loved it. That, like, that's where those level of games, those independent games like that go to publishers like, you know, Revolver Digital and stuff like that, that, you know, those are the type of games that are traditionally at a PAX, that have their, you know, window at a PAX, or their limelight at a PAX, not an E3 and stuff like that, that stuff like that works so well. And then you could have the Microsofts, the Sonys, the, you know, Nintendos or whatever, doing their direct style presentations that do these huge fucking numbers that, you know, at this point, it's so much easier to make cash on the internet and support businesses virtually during all of this, that it seems like just such a, like, I agree. I can't wait for conventions to fucking come back. Like, that shit's awesome. Nothing beats the hype of E3 that, you know, it sucks that it wasn't here this year, and we could have really used that this year, because there's so much, the year that fucking new consoles launch, come on, man. Like, that'd be fucking great. But it just seems like, to me, it's a just read the room type of situation, that it's like, now if they would have said, hey, we're going to do this in September, I'd be like, okay, I can see a scenario. I can see a scenario by then, that potentially, or even August or something like that. It just seems like, for me, in an area right now that is still fucking like in lockdown almost, in Massachusetts, and talking to another facility staff at a university in our conference, like, them being like, the amount of things they have to go through just to try to hold any kind of event is astronomical, considering, like, there's curfews still right now, that it's like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it does not, in my opinion. But
I think that also something that came to mind that we talked about a year ago when PAX and E3 and all this stuff was originally being canceled. I think, like, moreover, like, something that I kind of look at or think about when I hear this and see this is, like, maybe they're just committed to saying, like, hey, I know some of you are out there saying, like, PAX and E3 are never coming back, but this is proof that, like, regardless of what happens, we plan on coming back, no matter how long, you know, we're locked down and can't get together. So that's also, like, a positive way you could potentially spin it, at least.
No, definitely. And like I said, I don't think anybody doesn't want stuff to go back to normal. I fucking can't wait. As long as it's safe out, like, I'm fucking ready to get back to it. I'm ready to actually see people again on a normal basis, you know? I'm ready to have human interactions again on a social level, like, you know, and actually enjoy some of the things that are, you know, outside of my townhouse. But, you know, you just want to, people just need to, I just wish people would put other people's health first and foremost over anything. Like, at the end of the day, before the economy, you know, like you said, it goes so much hand in hand with politics and the government and everything like that, that it's hard not to get political with it. That it's just such a weird ball of wax, man. I just want people to be safe. I want people to be smart. I want stuff to get back to normal, and I wish people would take this shit seriously. That it's like, once we take it fucking seriously and we buckle down and, like, say, fuck it, we're wearing masks for 2 months or whatever, till we all fucking buckle down and get this fucking vaccination rolled out, and people start to actually fucking move on with life. Like it sucks. It sucks. It just all sucks. I don't know what else to say about it at this point. So, with that being said, Mike, let's head into party chat for the week. If you're new to the show, this is where we discuss and propose one question at the end of the show each week that we just want to go over. It could be as simple as, what's your favorite story beat in a game, or what have you been playing during quarantine, or could be a little more in depth as to why the negative stigma around gaming exists. And after answering it ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet your responses over on our Twitter at GPGC Podcast, or our email account, just like our listener did for this past week, and we'll read some of the responses the following week, like last week's question. With rumors swirling of a battle royale coming to Halo Infinite in 2021, what does 343 have to do to potentially make a potential real Halo battle royale stand out apart from the sea of competitors? And we had Todd B email in saying it has to feel like Halo and not just a BR clone. That's what makes Halo so unique to other shooters. Traditionally, no ADS, aim down sights, longer time to kill, etc. So, Mike, this week's question. Would you rather your favorite franchise release one game a generation that is a platform with updates like new campaigns and, having every couple years release a campaign or like a brand new 8 to 10 hour campaign, as well as obviously a live service, multiplayer component, kind of like a Fortnite, or having shorter standalone releases, traditional releases, but shorter standalone releases that come, every couple years, a la like a Spider-Man Miles Morales, like a 1.5 type of thing, or just the traditional release model that we see right now. Every 4 to 5 years, we're getting a new game anymore. We're getting, 1-2 entries at most every year of a franchise, every generation, I mean.
I do enjoy pretty much every option that's been laid out there is something that, like, I feel like it's unique to what game you're going to be playing. I feel like that's a huge caveat with it. But I will say my favorite franchise, if I could get this is kind of like a cherry picking question, because if I could get one Elder Scrolls game a fucking generation, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah.
But I digress. I'll go with something a little different. I feel like with Halo, having Halo Infinite be the game for the entire generation would make sense, or it being like 4 to 5 years before the next one, because it does seem like it's going to be a game of service. And then also like a game like Ninja Gaiden, if that came back around, I'd love to get that game like every 2 years, every 3 years. You know what I mean? Like that'd be terrific. So it does depend on the game for me, but I think once a generation, as long as you have, a game of service that you're kind of updating and taking care of, I think that, that would be worthwhile, and I would enjoy that greatly.
Yeah, I'm in the same, and actually I'm bringing this up because of the rumors surrounding like, hey, Halo Infinite's going to be a platform pretty much for the next generation or so, that you're going to get into this game and there's going to be a campaign, but the campaign is going to just be a stepping stone to every year or whatever. You're going to get a new installment in this game, a new, act, if you want, of this game, which I think is really interesting because we've never seen that really with a large scale, AAA release before, like a Halo, and we've never seen it move to a platform perspective like this. We've only ever seen games start as a platform and evolve like that. But I really like the Elder Scrolls, the Elder Scrolls pull from there, because I would love to at least just get one a generation. That would be fucking great, and not just
one
re-releases.
a decade. For
yeah,
fuck's
I
sake.
mean, holy shit! At this point, I mean, we're getting up on the 10-year anniversary of Skyrim. This, literally, we're at a little over 9 years now. In 2021, it's going to be 10 years, which is fucking ridiculous to think about. But I really hope that Elder Scrolls 6 just fucking Bethesda lands the plane with that. I really do.
They just do a fucking ninja drop. I don't even care. Like, if I got on tomorrow, if I woke up tomorrow morning and on Twitter it exploded because they just like ninja dropped Elder Scrolls 6, I wouldn't even care.
Yeah.
I'd be so happy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. That'd be the best news to wake up to. Hell, get fucking Starfield out at this point. Let's start there, and then then at least give us a Bethesda RPG to work with, and then hopefully, it sounds like them going in the dark, and I'm sure a lot of it was just in general with Microsoft, the Microsoft deal, and that being such a in the works thing for a long time. I'm sure that played into it, but I digress. So, Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on the interwebs, talk about all things video games like we did today, like the Halo Infinite news, like Cyberpunk 2077, and what the hell's going on with the development of that game, and much, much more. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus on most internet platforms, including at Travelus_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me over on Xbox Live, you could do so at just regular Travelus. That's TRAVLESS, no underscore. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways, which we have more coming up in the future, but congrats to everyone with the whole Cyberpunk 2077 giveaway and all that jazz. So, Mike, with that being said, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.